We'll continue on with our work building the detail view, and in this lesson we'll build the album detail view controller. I did make a few tweaks since the last lesson. Specifically, I made the album title bold and made sure I unchecked its auto shrink checkbox. And the artist name, I just made that a slightly smaller font size, so it's now 15 points. And these individual labels down here, I've made all of these bold. Alright, so let's build the controller. So I'll highlight the controllers group, type Command N, select Objective-C class, and type album details view controller. So I want to make sure this is a subclass of UI view controller, and we won't need any of these other items checked. Click Next, click Create. Alright. So let's go over to the interface definition. Let's go add all of our properties corresponding to the components we added to our UI. Now, I've prepared these ahead of time instead of doing these manually through Interface Builder, but we'll define all of our IB outlets for the various components that we have in our user interface. I'll go and synthesize all of those. So I'll add a couple of action methods as well, corresponding to our Save to List and Open in iTunes buttons. And I will create some stub implementations for those in the implementation file. I'll delete the view did unload since we won't need that. Switch back to the header. Let's go wire up our outlets and actions in our storyboard. So I'll open the assistant editor. But before we do that, we first need to make sure we set the class type. We haven't yet defined a custom class for this scene. So right now it just thinks it's a UI view controller, so it doesn't know which file to link with in the assistant editor. But we can fix that quite easily. So I will set this to album details view controller. So I'll hook all of these up. I'll control drag, UI image view, our album name, artist name, genre, and we don't want to grab the label, we want to grab the actual field for it. Price, date, and then hook up the connections for our buttons. Alright, so all of my IB outlet properties are set. Let's additionally hook up the buttons to their appropriate action method. So Save to List, and Open in iTunes. Now we can see that all of these have their connection indicator filled in, so we know these are all hooked up correctly. Let's go back to our view controller. And I additionally want to define a couple non-IB outlet properties as well. So I'll define an album, and this will be the album that gets passed from our list to this detail view. I need to import the album class. And I've also added a property called Save to List Enabled. And this will allow us to enable or disable the Save to List button as we need to. Let me go and synthesize those as well. Alright. And as I'm thinking about it, we also need to change the style on our Save to List button. So let me select that. And currently we're just setting the default style for it, which is the default state config. But let me change to disabled, and I want to change this text color to a slightly different color. I'll give this a light gray color, so it'll be more obvious that our button is actually disabled. Switch back to the view controller, and now let's actually implement the viewDidLoad method. So I'll set my various properties. I'll set the album image view to the album image, set the album name, set the artist name, set the genre, and for the price label we're going to use NSString's string with format method, since the actual string value that's contained in there just has 9.99 for instance. It doesn't have a currency indicator on there, so I will put a dollar symbol in front of this. Now for the release date property, this is an instance of NSDate. So before we can present this on screen, we first need to format it a bit. So I'll use this class called NSDateFormatter. And I'll create a new instance of this class and set its date style to NSDateFormatter short style. So this will give me a month, day, year type of format. And actually, I think this is based on the locale, so it technically will change based on the user's locale. I'll call it string from date method, passing in the release date. And then finally, we want to have the Save to List button enabled based on the current setting of this property. Now, in the case of navigating from the music list, we want that value to be false, so we don't actually have to set it. That will be its default value, because we want the button to be disabled in that case, since the albums are already going to be in that list. Alright, so we've completed our view controller implementation, and I think everything looks good. We've seen the process of wiring up outlets and actions a few times now, so you should be fairly comfortable with how to do this on your own. We should now be ready to get this implementation plugged in so that we can view our album details, and in the next lesson we'll do just that.